Welcome to The Local Lens, the podcast that brings the South Dakota community together. I'm Jamie Forrest, your host and your local realtor, here to showcase what makes our region a fantastic place to live. Join me as we explore vibrant local culture, highlight community events, and provide valuable insights for homeowners. Whether you're a current resident or considering a move, The Local Lens is your go-to source for everything in South Dakota. Let's discover, connect, and thrive together. Welcome to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Local Lens. It's Jamie Forrest here, and with me today, we have Taylor Zemlicka. He is a registered financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual Investment Services, and he's based out of Watertown, South Dakota. But he does have some connections here to Aberdeen. He went to Northern State University and got a human performance and fitness degree. So how cool. And he also played football there. So go Wolves. Taylor brings both discipline and strategy to his financial practice. Since joining Northwestern Mutual in 2018, he has become licensed and has clients in 13 different states. That's pretty amazing. And you serve as their trusted advisor for individuals and families. Outside of work, Taylor likes to give back through his leadership with the Waverly School District, and he also invests in local real estate where he lives. So welcome to The Local Lens, Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's just start kind of at the beginning of your career. So what took you from like football to finance? What made you choose that path?
Yeah, great question. For me, it was about the autonomy of being able to do what I wanted when I wanted. I was able and fortunate to grow up on a family dairy farm, which I still help out with every morning to this day. I knew with being able to help my family do things that was important to them, that would be a big goal for me to help with that for as long as I could. And obviously, being an advisor with Northwestern Mutual, I'd have the ability to do that in the morning and then be able to transition my day into working as an advisor and doing what I enjoy doing as well. And really, that gives me a lot of fulfillment. Time with my kids now, they're starting to get a little bit older. I have a 4, 3, and a 1-year-old, and my wife's a teacher here in town too. So trying to balance a lot of different schedules and having this role really suited all of those needs, in my opinion.
Right. Okay, so what lessons from your sports career do you carry into maybe some of your client relationships and some of your leadership within the company? Because obviously it sounds like you're pretty successful. You're in a lot of different states, have a lot of clients.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I think leadership is something that is often not utilized the correct way at times. There's so much power in these roles because there's so many decisions we help individuals make on a daily basis that they put their full faith and confidence in you. And I think it's our responsibility as advisors to do what's right all the time. And I think just being able to grind, whether it's on, the farm and on the playing field and practice and whatnot, there's plenty of times you have to do things when, you're not being watched and whatnot. And so I think to transition from those lanes into this one now and being able to be that resource for clients and help them in many different ways, it's enviable to be in that role and very appreciative that my clients entrust me with those decisions.
All right, awesome. Let's dive a little bit into financial planning, like in rural America, because we know South Dakota is very unique. So what kind of both challenges and opportunities do you think are unique to South Dakota families?
Man, I think more often than not, one of the biggest difficulties that we face, maybe in a blue collar community, is there's so many obstacles that we can run into, especially for young families that way with, again, wanting to buy a house that way and trying to start a family. And there's so many things that maybe get in the way of budgeting and saving when you're young, mainly because it's not that it's not a priority, Jamie. There's just other things that are more ideal to put money towards, right? So I
Right.
think just being able to understand that, I think having more of a long-term lens is really important that way. But it's hard to see that when the cost of living is getting so high, the cost of buying a house is getting difficult, as you know very well. It's hard to maybe focus on prioritizing, maybe it's kids' goals or just different planning strategies because again, you're just so caught up in the rat race of the day-to-day, the go all the time, and it makes it difficult for young
Yeah.
families.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed in South Dakota too, we drive. A lot of, more urban places don't have to drive. They don't have that car payment. They don't have that insurance. They don't have the gas because we do drive a lot, even just to go to our kids' sporting events. So that money, I think, does get sucked away. And, we have lower wages, but also our cost of living is lower. So it does kind of balance out. But how do you think it would be best here for our small communities in this town to have more financial education? Like, where can people go? What can people do? What are your ideas?
I think one problem on top of that is that I think when we're growing up, we're not always taught, through high school and whatnot, and maybe a little bit in college, but
Mhm.
there's not very often do I believe there's a financial literacy class that way in terms of learning to buy a house, doing your own
Mhm.
taxes, just simple planning like that, budgeting. I think there's very simple strategies that could be taught to young kids, especially kids when in high school that way. That would bring so much. I think there'd be a lot of joy in doing it. I mean, learning about Roth IRAs, something as simple as that would give so many extra people a leg up down the road because they were doing good planning or they had good education early on that way. So
Right.
I think that would be a big one in terms of just helping people find the best ways to grow their education.
I agree. I think a little more functional skills and not just straight, number crunching in school would
Mhm.
be very beneficial. So what
Amen.
do you think is a good long term, if somebody just has a minimal amount to invest, what's a good long-term planning strategy for those young professionals, young individuals, or young families to do?
Yeah, I think everyone's different, but I think if you're looking at, I think it's always wise to be very diversified. Jamie, I'll say that. But then on top of that, if you're looking at, if it's real estate, if you have the opportunity for real estate, that's going to make a lot of sense long term. If it's more of the Roth IRA strategy, it really is going to come down to what those goals are. If it's more of a short-term way to build wealth, looking at non-qualified brokerage accounts makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at just trying to be very tax strategic, we'll talk about, again, Roth IRAs, whole life insurance 529 plans for kids' education and whatnot. There's so many different ways to grow money. It just really comes down to specifically what you're trying to accomplish and when. And then from there, the last intangible would be how much risk you're willing to take. And obviously, all of those can offer different types of risk as well.
Right, right. So you talked a little bit, you invest in your hometown when you're involved in your community and you have property investments there. So what inspired you to start investing in the first place?
Yeah, I think just understanding the power of compound interest, again, wanting to be very well diversified, had good cash flow just due to hard work, in my opinion, was able to get into a little bit of everything that way. And I think the best way to learn is by doing. Jamie, and I think you learn a lot just by getting into real estate to begin with, putting money into non-qualified accounts, Roth IRAs, whole life insurance, all these things. And I know it's easier said than done at times, but when you start to learn for yourself firsthand, you really begin to build that invaluable experience for yourself long term again. So I think it's just trying these things and not being, I don't want to say being sheltered, that's probably a poor way to say it, but just maybe doing your education, doing your homework behind the scenes after work when you get some free time. Look for good opportunities and don't be afraid to take chances. That's what life's
Mhm.
about.
Now, do you have programs like if people are investing in a particular thing that you have where they can borrow against that, without a penalty sometimes to get that down payment for that investment property or anything like that? Do you have things that they should be investing in if they're thinking about wanting to save up to invest in a property?
Yeah, I get that question quite often. I would say utilizing whole life insurance can be a really good option for doing that because it's something that's very easy to put money into and then to borrow money out of. That being said, like anything else, if that time frame might be a year or two down the road, at that point, it's probably not the most ideal situation. That's again, maybe pulling money from, again, good savings accounts and whatnot. But again,
Mhm.
more of a mid to long-term strategy, especially Jamie, that's a prominent place that, if you have a do-it-yourself project you want to work on or take out or you want to be able to take care of a high interest loan somewhere else that way. Borrowing against your whole life insurance, being your own bank in that sense, is one strategy we talk about at length, in my opinion. And again, because you're able to grow money tax free in that bucket, while at the
Mhm.
same time, if something were to happen to you, you're not losing the life insurance benefit. It would just be I would say a minimal deduction against that life insurance in the event you were to
Right.
pass away, but very easy to borrow from depending on what those goals are.
That's awesome. That's good to know. Yes. And obviously, if somebody wants to know a little bit more about term life versus whole life, we'll get your information at the end of the show here today, and they can talk to you a little bit more about that. But what is your biggest piece of advice that you give to others that are considering investing in local real estate?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is if you don't believe that you have the know-how and the knowledge to do it yourself, do not be afraid to grab a buddy, to grab a friend that is well versed in something other than yourself. For instance, there's an individual maybe here in town who is very good with handyman work. That is not a line
Mhm.
that I am particularly great at. So in my opinion, find someone that would be maybe the opposite of you in terms of strengths and weaknesses that way and go in on a property with them if you can't do it yourself. And again, just begin to learn again by doing.
It is true. There's a lot that goes into, you're the numbers guy, but you have somebody else that understands when they walk into a house, besides your real estate agent, what maybe is wrong with that house or what would need to get repaired and can do it for you for a reasonable price. So that's a good way to partnership and build connections within your community. So, all right. So tell me a little bit about your role in the community. What do you do for the school district there? What are you involved with? Obviously, you have kids, your wife is there.
Yeah, I've helped out with a couple different things in Watertown in terms of tackle football programs. I helped coach Waverly when I was first out of college, and I just actually accepted it out, I guess, a position to help volunteer coach Castlewood football. So
Okay.
it usually ends up being football based to some extent for obvious
Yeah.
reason, but it's something for me that I would say I really enjoy numbers. I enjoy helping my family as well. My first passion was probably football, in my opinion. So to be able to get back into football as much as I can and to give back in that regard really fills my cup as well and something that I really enjoy doing now that I have a son, a couple daughters, to be able to coach as much as I can to help them and so they can see that growing up and whatnot means a lot to me as well. So I want to be able to be in the community as much as possible. And for the most part, it's been prominently football based and hope to expand on that as the years go on too, but it's been a blast.
Well, that's awesome that you can volunteer and give your time because it is a need. I mean, it's an increasing need, I feel like, with volunteers and having people that can do that in our communities to help those kids. Because it seems like there's more and more, programs for them compared to when I was young. So, like, we
100%.
didn't have soccer. I mean, you're younger than me, but yeah, it's definitely a need. And thank you for volunteering your time. All right, let's get back to a little bit about why you're here. What do you think is maybe this is kind of a tough one, is the biggest financial misconception that you see among like the people that you work with, whether it be in South Dakota? And then, how do you address that?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, honestly, Jamie. The biggest misconception that I think I endure on a daily basis, and I'm going to change lanes a little bit on your question, but I think going back to my first statement as well, there's so many times that we'll run into different plans that have been built, or we'll call it policies that have been put in place, and I sometimes struggle to maybe understand the why behind what people are doing. I think more often than not, the thing that I run into, I guess my answer to your question, I see many of commission-based products at times that I think just suits the advisor more than the client. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that issue is what brings on misconception towards whether it be, whole life insurance or annuities or just, because there's agents, there's advisors, there's people that just work in on the wealth side. So I think the biggest issue I see is that when people don't do the right thing, that's what creates misconceptions for other good advisors, in my opinion. So kind
Right.
of a roundabout way to answer your question, Jamie, but that is the biggest headache I think I see at times.
I mean, so education is key in helping people understand what they're investing in so they're not mad or angry if it's not doing what you thought you could do, if it's not a program that you can pull money out easily, if they thought they could and they couldn't. So it's just the education and getting a good advisor that will walk you through all the details of what you're investing in, basically is
Yeah.
kind of what you're getting at
Yeah.
is
I
that
mean, people,
educational part of it.
yeah, because I would say people don't know what they don't know. And a lot
Right.
of times, what they're doing is they're putting a lot of their hard-earned time and money and trust into one person, which is great. But if that one person doesn't have their best intentions at heart, that can really lead them down a path which long term can set them back quite a while as well. So that's probably my biggest issue, as well as misconception that goes along with financial planning, Jamie.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Cause yeah, you can, yeah, if you don't understand what you're investing in, it's easy to get angry when it's not exactly what you thought it was. So I
Mhm.
agree. Okay. So we know the economy, things are tight right now. So can you just talk about maybe a little bit, maybe some recommended financial habits that you have, just little things that people can do to help manage their money a little more wisely so they can financially get ahead to start some of these investment strategies that we've been talking about here.
Yeah. Two things I'll talk about. One, budgeting. Super simple. I think at times, I think the misconception there is it's only for people like in their 20s and maybe early 30s to budget. I think you'd be surprised how many people in their 40s and 50s still budget just because again they understand that they need to. Maybe they haven't in the past, and that can set
Mhm.
you up for a lot of long-term success as well because again you just become very structured and very diligent to follow that, and that can make a big difference long term. The other thing I would talk about, timing the market's a really tricky strategy, in my opinion, Jamie. So I think dollar cost averaging. So if it's, hey, I'm going to put in $300 a month into a Roth IRA, it's more about doing the little things like that as opposed to, hey, I got 15 grand in my bank account type of thing. I'm going to go put 10,000 into something that way. So what I'm getting at my answer to your question, don't try to be too strategic on timing the market. Be strategic in terms of dollar cost averaging, setting aside a reoccurring amount every single month to go into whatever it needs to be, whether that's, your real estate portfolio, your Roth IRA, your whole life insurance, your brokerage account, whatever it may be. Just get really good at being structured and having that come out routinely, and you'll be further ahead down the road.
Yes, I do that well with my kids' savings and mine. Like it just comes out. I forget that it even comes out, but honestly, it's just like it's honestly not even that much. Each account is
Mhm.
like $50 every 2 weeks. And it's like that
Mhm.
$50, like you don't even realize. So it definitely adds up. I started doing it. I have an 18-year-old now, and I've been doing it since she was 3 years old. So like for her college fund.
Mhm.
There's probably better. You probably have better advice, but that's just what I did because it was something small that I could do that I didn't think about and it didn't affect me financially. Just little steps. And it's amazing how in 15 years that adds up. So,
Yeah, I think what I would commend you on, Jamie, is the fact that doing something is better than doing nothing. I think at times
yes.
people look for the most perfect option out there and they just at times then drag their feet to do anything. So doing something's better than nothing.
Yeah,
That's
even
a
if it's
big thing.
$5, $10, $20, whatever you can do. And then as you feel comfortable upping that, definitely do that.
Mhm.
I mean, I agree. Because are there any like websites or programs? Because I've heard of things like Acorns or, like there's different things out there. Is there anything that you use or that you would recommend to people as far as if they don't know where to start in the whole budgeting and saving process?
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a link that we can attach. We use a budget sheet
Yeah,
for our clients as well. And that's something that to me, I think if you use that, I'm not saying you need to be religious with it, but be, again, as disciplined as you can be, Jamie. That's probably the best place to start because I do think that will end up giving you a lot of good habits down the road. I don't use a lot of those other accounts. I think I don't like being charged to save money at times, but if you need
right.
it, do it. But for me, that budget sheet is what my family uses pretty
Yeah.
consistently.
Well, definitely we can try to attach it at the bottom of this link or get your information and people can text you, email you, and get that budget sheet
For
too. But
sure.
let's try to get it attached. So, all right. Let's see. I mean, anything else that you can think of as far as things that can make a big impact over time besides even just starting slow and budgeting that you've had success with or your clients have had success with?
On that note, before we started, I was talking with my assistant here and she goes, financial planning. So she's like, what? It's not the most exciting topic in the world at times. She's like, what are you going to get into? And I said, well, I would agree with you. I think just the power and the education is what's important, Jamie. So what I would say to anyone wanting to have the conversation or curious about a discussion on any topic that way, what I would tell someone is whether it's me or anyone else that you trust, don't be afraid to ask questions because you can go online, you can get so many mixed reviews, in my opinion. And that's what I
Okay.
think is kind of daunting about this type of work that I do because planning is very difficult at times. And especially as you grow with your wealth, it gets very elaborate. So I do think it's just asking the right questions to the right people that you know you can trust and whatnot. If you don't have someone that way that you feel like you can trust, don't be afraid to contact me. Obviously, I would be willing to help, or someone on my team will. But the biggest thing is just take that first step, do it, and you will not regret it.
All right.
It
Well, what's
takes
the best
time.
way that they can contact you? We'll just get that in right now.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on my business line. That's 605-753-8612. That, or either shoot me an email, and either myself or my assistant will get that within 24 hours. Always, it's my first name dot last name at nm.com. So Taylor.Zemlicka at nm, N like North, M like Mutual.com.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're just going to kind of wrap up here. We've had a great conversation. It is a lot. Financial planning is a lot. So the best way to really figure out what's best to you is just to give Taylor a call. Sit down, and him or his team can run you through maybe what are some of your best options or where to start and dive a little deeper there. But let's just wrap up with one final question, kind of about South Dakota, yourself, and your career values. So how does being from South Dakota shape your identity, how you relate to people, and how you run your career?
I love it. I love that question. I would say, thankfully, I was born into a family that just very hardworking, very blue collar. And I think when you see the average advisor or the average person in this field, very often they look for the white collar professions, the attorneys, the doctors, and we have those clients as well. But I think anyone in my office, anyone in the state would probably tell you that I do a really good job connecting with people like me and people that are blue collar, we're blue collar. I do think I'm very well diverse in that regard. So able to wear a lot of hats, like my daily lifestyle. And so for that reason, I love being able to serve the everyday blue collar individual. It's what makes me happy. It's the reason I do what I do to this day is I'm more than willing to serve anyone that works hard. That is falls right in line with what means the most to me.
Yep. You're relatable to a lot of South Dakotans. I think here we do have a different work ethic than maybe other states do. And we are just more people centered, I think, in how we run our businesses. So I do love that. All right. Thank you so much, Taylor, for being here and giving us a little insight into financial planning. And it can be a scary topic, but give Taylor a call and he's happy to dive a little bit further into you guys. Thank you guys for coming and watching again. We'll see you next time. That wraps up this episode of The Local Lens. Thanks for tuning in and exploring South Dakota with me. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more listeners. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and more community highlights. Until next time, keep discovering, connecting, and thriving.